Ladies and gentlemen, I come to you here with a very important lesson for anyone who plays team games. I'm going to use Dota 2 as an example, but it has come to my attention over the course of many hours of Dota 2 that a lot of people struggle getting butt mad about their teammates. I wanted to break this down for you and kind of show you my process for thinking about the teammates that you get dealt just randomly if you're solo queuing or maybe queuing as 2 and you have a total of 5 on your team. You're going to have some randos on your team if you're not partying up with a full 5 stack every time, and a lot of people struggle raging super hard at the people who are on their team, and they feel like they're stuck and they can't move up the ladder because of other people. But this is a grotesque falsehood. If you're stuck, that's a you problem. I've moved up. I'm not a pro gamer at Dota by any stretch, but I've gone from being a Guardian 3 player to being an Ancient 2 player. And my main advantage has been focusing on my own improvement and accepting teammate variance. When I played poker back in the day, there's a whole chapter in the book on poker that said accept variance. And what that means is sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you get unlucky, even if your gameplay is exactly the same. Say you're playing your best. You're going to have some bad luck hands and you're going to lose money. That's just a fact. Some days you play like an idiot, but you get really lucky. Variance is like the waves of the ocean. It goes up and it goes down. And I wanted to break this down using a D20. If anyone has played Dungeons and Dragons, this is one of the main dice that you roll. And for fun, we're just going to break down here how the teams can feel. The teams that you get dealt when you queue into a game can feel very strong or very weak. And that's just part of the waves of the ocean. Let's start with the 20. So we roll a 20. When you have a 20, that's the highest possible roll. The highest possible roll means you have such an amazing team that you have great draft. The heroes that are picked are very good. They synergize well together. Players are good at their heroes. What I mean is people are playing their main heroes. Just look at my stats here. Like my Shadow Fiend is obviously way more successful than my Terrorblade. I haven't played very much Terrorblade. I'm kind of bad at Terrorblade. If I am Terrorblade in a match, my chances of winning are not as good. But I want to practice more heroes. But sometimes you get a bunch of people on your team who are all practicing different heroes than what they're really best at. That's another element here. Good communication. You could have really good communication between the players on the team. That's another element of a really lucky team. Another one could be good rune spawns. Your mid or someone gets haste early on and they rush in for a gank. Good map awareness. And then you've got good morale. So all of these things are kind of lining up to where if you have a Nat 20 team, you can almost play bad and you'll still succeed. Excuse me, I'm making a video. You can play kind of shit and the team just kind of kicks ass around you. I've been in this kind of game before where maybe I'm a hard carry and I'm just getting ganked. I'm getting caught out of position. I'm missing last hits, but my mid is kicking ass and my off lane is kicking ass. And my position 4 and position 5 are kind of roaming around the map and making great plays. And then suddenly we're just in a winning position. Did I play well? No, not really. I just got a Nat 20 team. Now, if you kind of scale this back a little bit, you've got 19, 18, 17, 16, etc. Down in the 15s range, it can feel like you got good communication, maybe some of these things, like a good draft, but not a great draft. You've got decent micro from your heroes, so they're pretty good at their heroes. You might not have any comms at all, which can be a breath of fresh air sometimes. And you've got decent luck. It feels pretty 50-50, but your team is overall positive and solid. That way, you can turn the tide in your team's favor, but they are setting you up for success. You could say you start out with a good lane. Maybe your support is really pressuring the enemy heroes and you can freely last hit to your heart's content. Sometimes you're on the back foot and just trying to stay alive. Other times, your lane partner is doing so well that you just feel like you have tons of freedom to maneuver and do whatever you want to. And then we go down 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. This would be like the average team, where your skill has a pretty big impact on whether or not the team wins or loses, because your team drafted about equally well to the enemy team. Your team is playing at an equal level, and it feels like a very even game all around. So you need to be working hard the whole match to be able to tip the scales in your team's favor. And now we're getting into the nasty part that really tilts people. When you're rolling below an average team. And this is where mental fortitude comes in. If you have an 11 plus, your team is already going to be giving you a pretty nice game. So appreciate that when it happens. I see this as a failing of people recognizing the hard work of other people when they'll just expect their team to just play super well all the time when they themselves don't play super well all the time. And they won't give their team credit for, damn, y'all really carried this game. Good job. Give people some credit, for fuck's sake. Because when the team is not doing too well, that happens too. That's another part of it. So let's go down to a 5 here. You've got a poor draft. Maybe you've got heroes that you picked that just ended up being countered by the enemy team. Maybe you've got rough lanes. Like you lost 2 out of 3 of your lanes. That's going to put your team on the back foot. And when your team is on the back foot, a lot of people will turn against each other. They'll start talking shit. They'll be like, you didn't rotate. You're trash. You're bad. You're terrible. Uninstall the game. All this kind of stuff. Reported for feeding. They'll talk in all chat. They start kind of pitting against each other if the team falls behind. And I credit the climb that I've made on Dota 2 to being able to accept that sometimes your team ends up behind at the 10-minute mark and the 20-minute mark. You are simply behind. But there are catch-up mechanics, and if you can focus on those objectives of catching up in the game, you can make a comeback because the team that's ahead can throw, and people do make mistakes. And the person who's going to be a really rock-solid player is the one who's going to be flexible, where you can play from ahead or play from behind and not get butt mad. A lot of people can't help themselves. As soon as something goes south, they talk shit, they get on people's case, they ping their items and abilities, and it just gets really nasty. So accept that sometimes your draft just isn't as good. That's just a fact. You don't need to yell at people over the course of the game of why did you pick this hero? Just think about how can we make this team work? What are the strengths of the heroes that we have? What are the power spikes that we have? What are the timings where we could take a fight? And where will we take those fights? So think about what you can do about the situation instead of just moaning and complaining about being in a bad situation. And then let's go down to the kind of 3-2-1 range. I would say the worst possible role for a team is when you have griefers, people who are actively trying to mess up things for the team. You've got toxic behavior like pause BM. You've got people who are just raging at their team, yelling in voice comms, or typing at someone aggressively. I've seen someone, it was a Night Stalker, God's rest his soul. He was sitting in the fountain after he died, and he was in that invulnerable state, still typing, just talking shit to our team. He wouldn't even get back into the fight. He was so mad, and he needed to let people know during the game, while he was alive, how bad they were. That's a really rough role for your team, and it's really hard to win 4v5. So when I get a player like that on my team, I accept that this is my turn to get a natural 1 team role. It happens to everybody, and if you can just accept that that's part of the weather, that's the lowest point in the waves of the ocean, then you can simply move on to the next game and know that regression to the mean means that you're probably going to get something closer to a 10 next time. You're probably going to get closer to an average team. Now, this range here between like a 6 and a 9 is really important for being able to muscle back into a positive situation for your team. And one thing that I would really recommend for people is to take ownership of your own mistakes. One thing that I like to do is if someone's like, Faceless Void, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you there? I'll just say, my bad. I'll make sure I farm in this area and just communicate that and move on. So I don't get into a fight. I don't let it turn into the team against itself. I just say, okay, I messed up. The flip side would be if I have a teammate who goes somewhere on the map that's just really dumb, it's very unsafe, and they go somewhere and they die, I don't need to yell at them. They figured out the consequences of that move by going there and by dying. So they already saw the outcome. I don't need to, on top of that, grill them and question them. Why were you there? What were you doing? That doesn't help the team. Just remind them the objective that they need to focus on. Hey, Crystal Maiden, stick with the rest of the team. You can't farm on your own, just on a lane at 25 minutes in. You're going to get killed in 2 seconds. That's a good piece of advice. And you didn't really say, you're trash, you're bad, you're terrible, uninstall. But some people will do that, and that's going to drag their team quality down a lot just by distracting from the objective at hand. So this is kind of a just general breakdown of the teams that you get and how a really strong player is not going to be too perturbed by the luck of their own team. They're going to appreciate when they get a really strong team, and they're going to give other people credit for helping carry the game. They're going to fight it out in all the average to below average games and do whatever they can. Focus on just learning your character, using your abilities, watching the mini map, focusing on the next objective, and you'll be surprised how many games you can save just by focusing on trying to play your best and not getting too hung up on having a bad player on your team. Bad games happen. I've had plenty of bad games myself. If I play 20 games, one of those games is going to be the worst performance. And unfortunately, the people on that team are going to have a lower chance of winning that one match. But your MMR is your average rank across all of your games, not just the one game. So to get good, accept the waves of good luck and bad luck of your team because it's not in your control. What is in your control is how you communicate, how you play, how you treat other people, and how you focus on the objectives at hand. So I wish you all luck in your endeavors, and I hope that this kind of mental breakdown of teammate variance can help you keep a cool head even through the tough teams. Just recognize that this does happen. People do play poorly sometimes. Forgive them and forgive yourself for your bad games as well. And just try to take the lessons to be learned from the match that you can apply moving forward. Thank you. And this has been a public service announcement in how not to get totally butt mad while playing team games.